tracking milestones of an incredible journey spanning 30 years. Rahman Music Sheets. Presenting Andrew Lloyd Webber, ARRAHMAN and Shekhar Kapur about Bombay Dreams, a Bollywood-themed musical theatre that truly launched Rahman's international career.
Bombay Dreams made a lot of Indian things cool.
In the middle of rehearsals, he said, "I'm off to pray,"
He used to be very, very shy. He wouldn't even talk to Andrew. Andrew did not know how to handle him.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, an English composer and impresario of musical theatre. In a career of more than 50 years, many of his musicals ran for decades, both in the West End and Broadway. His 15th production, Bombay Dreams, aimed to marry musical values of the West with the sounds and storylines of Bollywood. A boy from Bombay slums wanting to be a Bollywood star, Bombay Dreams provided a perfect plot for producer Andrew Lloyd Webber and Shekhar Kapur to use many existing scores and new compositions by ARRAHMAN.
I can say as a composer myself, and I wanted to produce him here because I just was such a fan of his music, and is that he's the most extraordinary melody writer. But he writes melodies in a way that a Western composer can't. The main thing was, and really the most important thing, was to provide a showcase for his marvelous music. Because, I think I probably was one of the very, very few people in England or America who at that time picked up or knew it. And of course, it was just astonishing to me how huge as a composer he was in the Indian community, whereas in London, say, we didn't really know.
You're a composer yourself. What was so unique about Rahman's compositions that you conceived a full-fledged musical around his music?
To me, what he's done is he's drawn on the background he obviously comes from, but he's somehow managed to mix it with Western influences, but then made it entirely his own. And from what I can see and what I can hear, because his songs are quite lengthy, sometimes the melody lines are really quite long, and sometimes actually they're very romantic. I think he's definitely a romantic, but yet he has this extraordinary grasp of rhythm. You can always tell one of his songs. If you just happen to hear it on the radio or somebody sends it to you over the net or something, you can always tell whether it's a Rahman one.
Musical theatre, whether it's Broadway or whether it's West End, some of it also needs to have the kind of lilting arias or lilting melodies, the kind that Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice are very, very famous for. If you pick up, or Argentina, Don't Cry For Me, Argentina is a very kind of it's a lilting composition. And so he came up with a couple of those for Bombay Dreams, which if people didn't know that ARRAHMAN had composed them, as I do know, would have said that no, actually probably Andrew Lloyd Webber composed those. They were of the style that's becoming very, very popular on musical theatre in the West End of Broadway. So he had the ability to do that. He did it. It didn't take him very long.
Rahman had already created a name for himself in the Indian film industry. He had evolved into a youth icon thanks to Vande Mataram. And he was busy composing music for some of the biggest movies at that time. But destiny had other plans. Rahman agreed to write music for Bombay Dreams.
I met Andrew in London and this prime time of my Indian prime time, I was celebrated in a way, and people loved all the soundtracks. I was doing a Rajnikant movie, I was doing Subhash Ghai's movie, and doing this Indian musical in the center of West End, London West End, which is such a reputed creative area. And so after doing that, many things opened up in my mind. The way I would do music changed, and the spontaneity which I had with even orchestrations had to change, because in England, when you have an orchestra, you need to get the score much before. You can't just go sit there and write, because you're paying by the minute and seconds, and they won't even play 1 second more than that 3 hours or 4 hours of time they give, and it's overtime. And that took a while for me, like a couple of years to get used to that stuff, finish everything, and then call the orchestra and orchestration and give the score, and then they played amazingly.
Bombay Dreams changed the way you composed music. Did it change anything for India too?
What happened with Bombay Dreams was one of the most important historical musical things which ever happened, I would say, because Bombay Dreams made a lot of Indian things cool. Indian dresses, Indian fashion, Indian songs, because when something is on West End, it becomes cool because it's such a statement. And of course there were apprehensions before, and we would have discussions, and Andrew would say, this Indian show happened here, it didn't even run for 3 days, they had to close it. But then when this came in, there was so much of celebration again, there was so much of... it didn't get good reviews because it's about another culture, first of all. A lot of rules have been changed on West End, but it became such an important musical. If I were to do something like that now, it would be completely different with steroids. And if I find time, I would say. But it's thanks to Andrew that all this thing happened, and thanks to Shekhar Kapur, I was in it.
Being a stage show, Bombay Dreams required planning and execution that was quite different from films. But did you also apply very different kind of sensibilities altogether? I mean...
It was strange. For me, mentally, I was going through this. I mean, I've heard some of the best musicals of like Sound of Music and My Fair Lady and even Andrew's own Phantom of the Opera. And you come in to write something amazing. But what was interesting is, more than the musicality, it was also the culture which impacted the whole culture of Indianness, which was also on mainstream, along with the music, along with the story. Though the story is very simplistic, and it was just discussed over the table, and it was done, and all the exotic things of India was put in one plate, and let's do this. But still, I think it was such a major breakthrough, I would say, in London West End Theatre, and for people to even remember all the songs. Even some of the pop stars or the Mika, they keep raving about the songs, and even the songs which didn't make it to the musical, they keep singing, and I keep meaning that.
Many iconic songs from Indian films originally composed by ARRAHMAN were recreated for Bombay Dreams. Released by Sony Music, more than 250,000 copies of the soundtrack were sold in the UK.
Bombay Dreams used quite a lot of his existing songs because to a British and to a Western audience, of course, nobody really knew them. That was the thing. Obviously, they were absolutely huge in the Indian community here, in the Hindi community. But outside of that, of course, nobody really knew them at all. So there were two things. One was to use as many of the great melodies that he'd written in the past as we could, but equally so because a new musical, there was quite a lot of material that needed to be composed. So I was sort of able to guide him through how we construct things for a stage musical.
Salam Bombay, Salam Bombay. Salam Bombay, Salam Bombay. Praise the gods and smile on Bombay. Keeping our land from the flood, saving the harbors made of mud, lifting the heart, cleansing the mind, testing the
A couple of the new songs were actually done here in India when he and I sat together before Andrew Lloyd Webber came here, and then we presented the songs to Andrew Lloyd Webber. But there are such different cultures. He's now, of course, a very different man. He used to be very, very shy. He wouldn't even talk to Andrew. Andrew did not know how to handle him.
While he was in London working on Bombay Dreams, did you notice something unusual?
It always used to amuse me that when we were working in the office together, that we sometimes went across the road to a restaurant, and he would literally, any Indian person in the street stop and say, it's him. And I had no idea what a god he was, even in London.
Deep-rooted spiritualism is steeped into his musical sensibilities. Did you feel that while working with him?
Oh yes, and he disappears to pray from time to time, which is a little something that perhaps we in the West don't get. When in the middle of rehearsals, he said, I'm off to pray, I must take to doing this actually, it might be quite good, might help me.
So how did you react to these cultural differences in general?
Well, I think we got on really so well, and that it was really fascinating. I mean, in a way, it was more interesting to me to see what happened in his home in India, in Mumbai. It was really quite interesting there, because there was still a sort of among the sort of Indian rich and mega rich and things at that time, there was still a sort of feeling. I sensed of, why was I interested in all of this? And I kept saying to them all, look, you've got to understand, in your midst is probably the world's most talented young composer now. And of course, I know they all now realize what I was talking about, but I must say that was the thing that fascinated me at the time. Well, I think, he's one of the most extraordinary melodists of the 20th, 21st centuries. He spans both clearly. I really feel that the way he's taken his music and the way he's managed to make something which is very definitely his own puts him right up there with, the great melodists of all time. The McCartneys, the Richard Rodgerses, the Gershwins and all of that. I think he will be remembered in 30, 40 years' time as somebody right up there with all of those, and particularly as the world gets smaller. I think you'll find that, not that he really needs it now, because I think he probably statistically is the world's most successful composer right now. But I think he will be remembered as right up there with the greats.
Go someplace you have never been before. That's the tagline of Bombay Dreams and can be applicable perfectly on Rahman. Bombay Dreams premiered in the West End in June 2002 and continued till June 2004. On Broadway, it opened in 2004. It truly launched the international career of ARRAHMAN. His mentor on the Western music scene, Shekhar Kapur, continues with us in our next episode. Stay with us. Rahman Music Sheets will continue to track his incredible journey to superstardom, connecting you with his creative partners, also engaging with musicians he inspired. If you have reinterpreted or recreated Rahman's music, share your videos. If selected, you will get featured on Rahman Music Sheets. To submit your videos, log on to our website o2-india.com.